Do you like to gamble? If so, the Newcastle versus Tottenham game tomorrow. To me, guaranteed half-time Newcastle, full-time Tottenham. Get your money on it. You might even get odds as long as 18 to 1 or even 25 to 1 in some places, but I can guarantee it as much as I can anyway. Guys, this is the Spurred On podcast. I'll be doing my match preview for the Newcastle versus Spurs game right now. Please do press that like button and subscribe if you're not already. And if you're listening on the podcast platforms, please also come over to YouTube and give me a little like and subscribe. But let's go into what's going to happen in tomorrow's game. And I can't start this match preview without referencing the reverse fixture just a few months ago at home at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It really was a big release of tension. Spurs hadn't been in the greatest form. Richarlison hadn't been in the greatest form this season. He notched a brace and we got a 4-1 victory. But let's not forget, right at the beginning of that game, Newcastle had an unbelievable chance, as so many times this season. An opposition team broke in behind our fullbacks. This time it was Anthony Gordon down the left. Got into the box, played a beautiful cross, and Alexander Isak missed an open goal. And what may not be remembered that much is that Ben Davies, who was having to play centre-back at the time due to our injuries, got a little touch on the ball, which meant that Isak could only kind of shin it wide of the post. So we were lucky not to go 1-0 down. But then, after that, we got in, mostly down the left. Sonny with the assist for the first one for Destiny Udogie, down the left, beating Kieran Trippier for pace. And then another Sonny assist for Richarlison, again down the left, beating this time Trippier for strength, really, in a one-on-one. Then Richarlison got his second goal from a ball over the top from Pedro Porro. Decent control. Maybe Martin Dubravka could have done better in closing Richarlison down. And the final goal was a Sonny penalty from a Dubravka trip. The reason I'm telling you all this is because, as I will get into later, Newcastle are decimated by injuries. And some of the players who had to play in that game, Dubravka, for instance, will have to play again because Nick Pope is still out. So that could be a big thing for Spurs. Also, Joe Linton got Newcastle's consolation goal that game. He also scored, I think he scored 4 goals for Newcastle against Spurs, and he is out too. So that will all come together with the other injuries, as I will discuss later on, to give Spurs a chance of getting that kind of second half comeback win that I envisage them doing. I think it's very difficult to go to St James's Park and not really concede in the first half. They've scored so many goals, they've really got the crowd behind them, so we're going to have to just kind of deal with the pressure that we'll come under. But if we can stick in it till the second half, that's why I think that half-time Newcastle, full-time Spurs is a possibility. The other thing we need to talk about, of course, even though it is still, fresh in the mind and devastating, only 11 months ago was that 6-1 humbling at St James's Park. Stellini was our caretaker manager at that point. He changed us to a back four without seemingly doing any kind of coaching and showing any of those players how to do it. Pedro Porro was really thrown to the wolves, having to play right back in a back four for the first time in a long time. Obviously, he came in under Conte, played as a wing back, and before that at Sporting Lisbon, he'd been playing as a wing back too. Hugo Lloris made a couple of errors in that game. Joe Linton was really pulling the strings for Newcastle. It was 5-0 to Newcastle after just 20 minutes. And that marked Lloris, who's a club legend, let's face it. But that marked his last appearance for Tottenham Hotspur. He never played again, in my opinion. They said he was injured at halftime, but in my opinion, I think, probably went absolutely nuts at his teammates at halftime. Maybe there was a fight or he attempted a fight. He had to come off as a result. The manager couldn't let him stay on, and I don't think he could be seen in a Spurs shirt after that. It's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments if you think that's what happened with Hugo, but I've always felt strongly that is kind of what led to the end of his Tottenham career. Let's face it, what a player he was for years for Spurs, but his form had really dropped off in those kind of last few months, and we're very fortunate to have Vicario now as his replacement, who I just love. What an incredible goalkeeper he is. So let's talk about Newcastle's season so far. It's been very up and down, and in fact, I think a lot of Newcastle fans would say it's mainly been down. But if you compare it to, if you take out last season, their Champions League qualifying season as a bit of an outlier, being in 8th at this point, especially with the injuries they've had, is pretty good. They're only 1 point behind West Ham in 7th and only 2 points behind Manchester United in 6th. So considering all of those injuries, they've done incredibly well. They've played 14, drawn 5, lost 12. So like I said, up and down. They have scored 65 league goals this season. That is the same amount as us, and we're in 4th place. The main difference between us, though, and we are obviously seen as a team who concede a lot of goals, they have conceded 52 to our 45. So 7 more goals they've conceded than us. And that is the kind of main difference between us in 4th and them down in 8th. As you know, if you watch my match previews, I like to go through the home and away league form tables based on where we're playing. So obviously Newcastle are at home. They're currently in 6th place in the home league table. 110, drawn 3, lost 3. So that really scans with how difficult it is to go to St James's Park and get a result. But before the last few years, we've actually had a pretty decent run at St James's Park. I can remember a lot of good victories. Harry Kane, I think, scored a lovely lob there, and maybe even a penalty too in what was, I think, the first game after the Saudis arrived. We really kind of silenced the raucous Newcastle fans that day. A lovely lob from Harry Kane, I can really remember. I even remember as far back as when we had those Kappa kits and we'd done loads of transfer dealings under Frank Arneson. This will be in the very early noughties. Frank Arneson had come in as our football director, and he'd made loads of signings. And one of those signings, who really in the long run turned out not to be very good at all, Timothée Atuba, a fullback, cut inside from the left onto his right foot and bent it into the far corner, absolutely silencing St James's Park. I remember as far back as that. So we've had some good results there, but obviously that 6-1 absolute thrashing really last year is quick in the memory. In terms of the away table and where Spurs sit, we're 5th in the away table, 1-6, drawn 6, lost 3. That's pretty good, I think, in terms of how the home and away tables for Spurs match up. Considering we're 4th in the league overall, I think to be 5th in the away table is pretty good. Let's go through some of Newcastle's last 6 home results. 1-1 against Everton, so not great. Before that, they won 4-3 against West Ham, but remember, that was the comeback game. West Ham were 3-1 up pretty deep into the second half. Newcastle turned it all around, and actually that turnaround happened, after David Moyes, who had kind of stuck to his guns, as he always does with classic Moyes ball, similar to Conte ball, just defensive, try and hit them on the break through, Paquetá, Bowen, Antonio and Kudus. And then he made some changes actually in the second half when they were 3-1 up and made it even more defensive. I think he brought on another defensive midfielder for a forward, and I think it just kind of galvanised the Geordie fans, and they turned it round with 3 quick goals. Harvey Barnes that day was a real star for Newcastle, and he's a player I rate very highly. It always surprises me when he's on the bench for them rather than starting. I don't know if he's had a niggly injury or what, but I really rate him, so he's definitely one to watch out for. So yes, 4-3 win against West Ham, 3-0 at Wolves, good result. Gary O'Neill, as we know, to our cost, has got Wolves playing well this season. 2-2 at home to Bournemouth, not great. Another example of goals. In fact, all of these show how many goals Newcastle score and concede. 4-4 at home to Luton, not a great result. And prior to that, they lost 3-2 to Manchester City. So yeah, loads of goals there. I expect lots of goals in this game as well, based on that kind of the amount of goals they've scored and conceded this season, as have we. Team news. This is where it really gets interesting in terms of the Newcastle decimation by injuries. Joe Linton, Botman, Lascelles, Miley, Trippier, Pope, obviously the goalkeeper, Livramento and Almiron, all definitely out. I would say other than Lascelles, they are all, maybe other than Lascelles and Miley, they are all guaranteed pretty much first team players who are definitely out. Matt Targett and Willock, doubtful as well. They'll be assessed. So that's really why I started this by saying I can really see Newcastle using the crowd, getting on the front foot, and maybe nicking a goal in the, early on in the first half, and we've got to stick with them. But if we can stay in the game, drawing, winning, or maybe only losing by 1 goal into the second half, when it gets to that kind of 65th, 70th minute, and we have such a strong bench, I could really see us kind of piling the pressure on Newcastle and really getting something there. In terms of Spurs' team news, it's only really, other than the long-term injuries of Solomon and Forster and Sessegnon, it's only Richarlison that is a doubt. He's still nursing that knee injury and obviously missed the Nottingham Forest game. So the team that I'm going to predict Spurs playing, I think it's difficult, this one, obviously, because the two central midfield changes were made at half-time in that Nottingham Forest game. So this is a tough one today. But the back four, as usual, Vicario, Pedro Porro, Destiny Udogie, Romero, and Mickey van der Ven. Oh, Mickey van der Ven. I say it on the We Are Tottenham TV watch-alongs, but if you don't watch them, Mickey van der Ven is the first player we've had since Moussa Dembele who, whenever he's in a 50-50 challenge, I just turn away. I'm not worried at all. What an unbelievable player to have that pace and strength together as a centre-half, and the way he reads the game, the way he brings the ball out from the back, and his comfort on the ball to play that left foot ball out to Werner or Son, whoever's playing on the left, brings us unbelievable balance. I'm now going to say that I think Pierre-Emile Højbjerg will start in the 6 instead of Bissouma. The reason that is I think he played very well against Forest when he came on, but also, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the reverse fixture, when Gordon got in down the left and made that chance for Isak, and the goals we've conceded recently against Forest, against Luton, and many more, they all come from balls that and opportunities that come down the flanks when our fullbacks are inverted and far up the pitch. And I don't think Bissouma is doing enough at the moment to cover those gaps. And that's why I just wonder if Højbjerg, especially at St James's Park, where there's going to be pressure on us, will be picked to try and cover those gaps a little bit better and work back into our own box when there's a break behind us, kind of with more intensity than what Bissouma has been doing in the last few weeks. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Will Pierre start over Bissouma? I'm then going Bentancur over Sarr. Again, I think he played well against Forest and gives us a little bit more control in midfield. Then Maddison, Werner, Son, and Brennan Johnson. I think they're kind of nailed on picks. I think Werner's playing well, and as we saw in the reverse fixture, possibilities to get in down the left-hand side and set up goals from there, and Werner's doing well at that. My prediction, as I said, I don't have a score for this, but I just think strongly half-time Newcastle, full-time Spurs. Let me know in the comments what you think the team and the score will be. Please do press like and subscribe. Also, if you're on YouTube, go over to the podcast platforms. Give me a follow and a subscribe there. It all really helps. And guys, good luck tomorrow. Come on, you Spurs.